Thank you for joining us for this episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. People like me, Michelle Kane with Voice Matters, and my wonderful co-host, Karen Swim of Solo PR Pro. Hey, Karen.
Hello, Michelle. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, riding the wave of these crazy times. How about you?
Living the dream.
Aren't we, though? That's true. And it is still a dream that we are living. Perspective is key these days.
Yeah.
And one of the items that can almost be a little bit nightmarish in our dream is getting ghosted. Ghosted by prospects, even ghosted by fellow, pros that you might want to partner with or work with. So today we're just going to talk about some tactics that you can use to I guess what are we doing? We're scaring the ghosts out of the house. I don't can't think of a good metaphor these days. Sorry, my brain is it's
Yeah.
suspect.
It's so unfortunate that ghosting has been around for a while.
Yeah.
And it really first started to get illuminated in dating culture. And then it just made its way into the workplace and took hold. And I heard an HR, and I don't, is she an HR professional? I believe so. Chameleon Resumes, I believe is the name of the company, say that ghosting hurts your heart and your mind. And I think that that's really true because as human
Yeah.
beings, no one likes to um, start a relationship, whether that relationship is, a professional relationship or potential business relationship, and then just be completely ignored, to just have someone not respond to you. That really hurts. But it also can hurt your mind because you spin tales in your head about what you did to cause it. And so I hate this trend. I hate
Yeah.
it with passion. I want it to cease. I wish that we could go
Yeah.
back to being kind to one another, being respectful. But today we're going to talk about some tactics to minimize it, but also to handle it when it inevitably happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of the issue too is when it became normal to not receive any word when you applied for a job, right? I mean, I think we both remember you would at least get the rejection letter or the
Yeah.
rejection email, and
Yeah.
now you get nothing. And the story goes, "Oh, there's just too many." I'm like, "Really? That's interesting." Because you can put too many emails into a marketing email. You can automate that stuff. And so it's just really become way too part of our culture. And like you say, even though it may not harm your psyche in a big way, it's still a little chip in it, and it's just not good. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, I don't think there's any good reason to do it, and I do understand the flip side of, "Hey, we all get busy." I know, we've all put proposals out, and you don't hear within the timeline that you think you should, um, and I get it. Sometimes I'm not great at returning emails to things that don't fit in the top tier of my triage. However, I would say the first way to combat it is follow up. Just follow up, touch base. Nothing wrong with that.
And I think you brought out something really interesting. So I separate ghosting. So when we
Mm,
are uploading a resume
yeah,
into a system, it's
yeah,
no human interaction. An
right.
algorithm is going to filter you out. Same thing when you respond to an RFP and just upload a proposal
Yeah,
or
that's
send
true.
it to an email address, it is no human interaction. So my recommendation for making sure that you are not faced with a lack of response, because chances are with both of those scenarios, which are similar, you're not going to get one. Your
Right.
chances of not receiving a response are so much higher than someone responding to you. And so one way to minimize ghosting is to make sure that you are forcing human interaction. And if
Mhm.
there is no ability to interact with a human being, then it's probably not worth your time. And
True.
I'm going to stand by that because RFPs are notoriously a big time suck.
Yeah.
So often there's a certain type of company that puts together an RFP, and in reality, it does not even clearly articulate what's really needed to have success on the thing that they're searching for.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of differences. RFPs where you're invited and you're having a conversation before you actually put something in writing.
Right.
Because if you can speak to people and if you can determine that it's something that is really winnable, like you really have a shot at it. So maybe there's only 5 agencies that are being invited to bid. That's a different scenario, but you at least have that human contact. So my advice is don't put yourself in these situations where
Yeah.
no response is acceptable, because in
Yeah.
those situations you can't get offended. You took a shot, you uploaded a resume, you uploaded a response, and you took a shot at something. It does not mean that you are guaranteed to get a rejection or any type of response unless they're interested in moving forward. And again, a high percentage of the time that just does not happen. So avoid
Yeah.
those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say sometimes that is mirrored in the job search, right? It's, you know, you I'm sure we've all had the experience where you might go for an interview or you pursue something, and then once you're in the process, you realize, okay, you guys really don't know what you're hiring for. And, you know, so I completely agree. I completely agree. And, sometimes too, I found that the prospect has questions maybe that they're not sure how to ask and that maybe didn't come up in your first interaction. So that's also a good way to get some reaction or response, is to just, try to suss that out if you can. It's like, hey, I know we talked about this. Is there anything that maybe you've thought of in the meantime as you've, reviewed this proposal? Just to really try and get them to re-engage on that level.
Yeah. And, you know, it's true ghosting when you have a meeting, or if you're a job applicant and you've interviewed for a job. So you've actually taken the time, maybe you've driven somewhere, you put on your, best suit, and you are there, you've done the prep work. And both of those situations, and even if it's a virtual meeting, it still takes time to prepare for those meetings, to meet with a either potential employer or a potential business partner,
Mhm.
and then you hear nothing back. So on both fronts, I would say do as much research as you can on that company and their track record.
Mhm. Yeah.
From the business perspective, do they have a current agency in place?
Mhm.
Because that's telling. Sometimes companies will use this tactic of
Yes.
searching for an agency just to find out if they can get a lower price
Mhm.
or what's out there. And then they want to leverage what they hear from other agencies to try and pressure their current agency into lowering their rates.
Yep.
So if they have another agency, do not be afraid if you decide to take this meeting to ask, like, we know that you have another agency in place. Can you share with us why you're looking for someone new? You also want to always pre-qualify for jobs and
Yes.
also for business. Are they really hiring? Are they hiring an agency or hiring an employer? What's the date that you want to see someone in place? Do you have a defined budget for this? Are you just is the role really currently open? So you want to, for solos, we have this whole pre-qualification questionnaire
Yeah.
on our site that you can make your own, but ask questions before you commit anything to writing. So you want to use this face-to-face time to really get to solid answers, because if they don't have a defined budget, they don't have a date when they really want you to be in place, they can't articulate really why they're looking for an agency, those are red flags.
Yeah.
And you are very free at the end of this conversation to follow up with an email that said, it was really great to meet with you. After some consideration, we've decided that we're not the right agency for you. We wish you the best in your search. You are
Exactly.
not you are not obligated to follow up with a written proposal just because you met with something. Trust your gut. Your time is valuable, and we do not have time to waste on proposals for people that are trying to use it to pressure their current agency or just kind of looking around because they just
Right.
want to know. Like, you want to find out facts, you Google some stuff. I am
Yeah.
not your girl.
Yeah. I mean, that is so true. And the major red flag is, do you have a budget? And if it's no, or if it's small, you just think, well, then
Yeah,
I, I'm not accusing you, but you're not really serious about this if you don't think that you need to put an actual budget to your marketing. You know,
100%.
there's really not much farther we can go. And I know, sometimes I've had prospects where they openly don't know what they don't know. And, a way that I can get paid time, or we can get paid for our intellectual um, efforts, is to have, phase one. Well, phase one is I'll do the research and you'll get a strategy, and then you can decide from
Yep.
there. So at least you'll get a product. I'm not, putting strategy in my proposal. I think we are so ingrained as helpers that we need to stop ourselves
Yeah.
before we give it away for free, right?
Yeah.
So
And
that
I
is
love
that is
that.
one way
You
for
can
sure.
actually give
Yeah.
them a strategy.
Yeah.
We've offered up helping them to source an agency for a
Yeah.
fee.
Yeah.
Another thing that I do is that I'm never afraid to throw out a number because you're right.
Right.
There are companies that have not done PR, they have no idea. And they
Right.
will tell you that. They were like, we really don't have any idea what the budget for this is. Here's
Yeah.
what we're looking to do. And then I'll
Yeah.
say, well, were you thinking in X to X range, or, and I might throw out like a wildly big number or
Mhm.
here. And they'll tell you because they'll be like, oh, okay, because you just are helping them frame it.
Yeah.
So I'm not
Exactly.
saying that if they don't have a budget at all, you again, this is where you have to use wisdom and be
Yes.
discerning. Sometimes people really are clueless. They really
Yeah.
do want the service. They just have no knowledge and have never hired for it. So they come into it honestly saying, we really don't know because we've not done this.
Right.
Well, here's
Right.
what you're looking at. And
Yeah.
then you can find out how serious they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that in and of itself, I think, to many of them, especially some of the small businesses that I meet with, I mean, like, small businesses,
Yes.
um, that is a help, because they don't realize what goes into a successful program, or even what their parameters should be if they're trying to tough it out and do things themselves. I think it really helps them with reality, because my goodness, I could think of so many industries that I am the same way, right? It's
True.
like, "Oh, I need a plumber to do XYZ." Well, what does that cost?
Yes, because it's not our area of expertise, and
No.
if it's not a service that you hire for all the time or have done before, you just really have no idea until you go looking.
Yeah, and I would say, if the ghosting is longer term and you're still interested for whatever reason in keeping touch with this person, maybe it's an industry you really want to work in. Maybe you had a really good feeling and you're just like, well, I don't know, stuff happens. It doesn't hurt to touch base maybe every 6 weeks or so. You know, if you see something interesting in the news or in the industry that could be helpful to them, shoot them an email. Just like, "Hey, did you see this? Thinking of you. Hope everything's okay." Just staying present in their world, because I think a lot of times too, they think they want to start a program, but they're really not ready. I mean, I know we've had that happen, right? Where we're talking, we're like, "Yeah, you're not ready for us yet." So you just try
Yeah.
and keep in touch.
They're not ready, and something shifts internally.
Yeah.
The person that you were in contact with actually leaves the company, and you
Yep.
didn't know that. Sadly, I've even had, contacts pass away.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a legitimate reason. Except for death and illness. Those still aren't legitimate reasons for
Right.
not communicating back
No.
with someone, but you're right. You should have a tickler of follow-up and just keep following up. I mean, I followed up with people for a year before something has happened. It
Yeah.
hasn't been radio silence that entire year, but it took
Yeah.
some work.
Yeah.
If though, another tactic that you might use just to make sure that you're going to get a response is if you are at the point where you're going to submit a proposal. So you've met with them, you've talked to them, You're like, okay, this sounds great. I would be excited to do this work. We can actually do this work and we actually have a chance and they're very serious. You could let them know, hey, we have an agency policy that we deliver the proposals and we need to meet within 48 hours of delivery because that gives us the opportunity to talk through it. So you
Love it.
set up a next meeting. If you're not comfortable with that language, you can also just use a softer touch to say, hey, before we deliver the proposal, to make sure that we can go through it together, let's set up a meeting now that we can go through it together because you will have questions and we want to walk you through our thinking and then address any concerns or questions that you might have. So set up a time on your calendars to actually have another face-to-face once you've given them the proposal, and try to deliver that proposal as close to that meeting as possible so that there's not
Yeah.
I also sort of safeguard against, because sometimes budgets, even when you've talked about them, when people see them on paper, they freak out. So I always tell people that I just address it right up front. Listen,
Yeah.
we're putting together something based upon our conversation. But if the numbers, are more than you thought that they were, please don't let that deter you. Let's talk about
Right.
it because we can talk about the scope of work. I just put it
Yeah,
on the table.
exactly.
So there's, those are a couple ways that you can minimize. Now, I will tell you, nothing is foolproof because
No.
human beings are human beings. And in spite of doing everything right, you're still going to run into those instances where someone is just not going to respond to you.
Right. Right. And it's, please don't take it personally. It's never personal. It's just, I think we all know and how busy and overwhelming our day to day can get.
Yeah.
It's not personal. You're just nowhere near the top of the list. It's just not a priority for them. And that in and of itself does communicate something, doesn't it? Clearly they're not ready, but it doesn't mean you can't make your presence known and just let them know that, hey, remember when you asked me to spend time on something? Hi.
I think the best piece of wisdom, you just said it. There's this book that I'm reading, The Four Agreements, is
Mhm.
don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Here's where we really protect ourselves from negative feedback, from no feedback, from ghosting, is that we do not allow other people to tell us how to feel about ourselves. They are responding in a way that is who they are,
Yes.
part of their journey, part of their perception, and even their perception of who you are.
Yeah.
So maybe in their perception of who you are and the way that they're telling your story is that it's not going to bother you if they don't respond, and you'll know that something happened and they don't want to move forward. They're making assumptions. And so when you personalize somebody else's interpretation of your story, you've now bought into that narrative
Yeah.
and you've given over your control. This can be a game changer, I promise you, when you actively learn to just say,
Mhm.
I'm not internalizing that. I'm not taking it personally. That's their thing and that's on them. It's not on me. And you just continue to move forward. It brings about a dead, cold calmness that allows you to be so clear in your actions and to never lose your sense of self, your joy, your peace, your happiness about who you are and what you do. So just don't take it personally, but more than words, you really have to take a beat and say, that's them.
Yeah.
That's who they are. That's how they're living their story. It has nothing to do
Nothing.
with me. It's not like they looked at you as a human being or as an agency and said,
Yeah.
you completely suck. I hated your shirt. You wear your hair weird. Your eye color doesn't match what I wanted it to be. You have zero experience, and I'm just not even going to talk to you because
Right. They're
real.
just not that into us. That's all.
And it's not because of you, because you know
No.
that you're smart, capable, because you won't put yourself out there for something that you think you cannot do.
Yeah.
So it's really not you and it's not a personal thing.
Yeah.
And it's their failing because I truly believe that we win when we communicate with everyone. I don't care if you got 100 job
Yep.
applications. If you're getting too many job applications, change your freaking process. Be more targeted and intentional in hiring people, because it just gets me so riled up. I hear
Yeah.
from too many good, capable people who have gone on 4,
Yes.
5 in-person
Yeah.
interviews
Yeah.
and then get ghosted.
Yeah.
That is a shame. There's no excuse
No,
for it.
there
So
is no excuse for that at that
no
level.
excuse. The companies who
Absolutely
are
not.
doing this, you belong in the big fat hall of shame, and no one should ever want to work with you because it's such a lack of respect to
Well,
humanity. You're sending a
yeah.
message that that person doesn't even matter enough. They spent time preparing, coming to an interview, meeting with you, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times. Some people have gone on 6 interviews. This
Yeah.
is torture in and of
That's insane.
itself. And
Yeah.
then you say nothing.
Yeah.
Grow a pair and tell people why you're not moving forward with the process,
Yeah.
because that's the human thing to do. And you know what? We've got to get used to having those hard conversations again. Does it feel good to tell someone, I'm sorry, we're not going to hire you? Of course it doesn't. But it feels worse to be left not understanding what happened. And we still
Yeah.
will feel that too. When you
Oh,
put
yeah.
yourself out there with a proposal and you put everything into it and you have been creative and you've really thought about this company and you have given it over to the hope that you're going to get to work with them and you're excited about that. And then they say nothing to you.
Mhm.
Ooh, radio
Well,
silence, it's
a
rude.
and in that instance, when you're that deep, then it's probably not a place you wanna be anyway, because if that's
For
how they
sure.
treat you there, I mean, that's
For
a
sure.
culture problem,
For sure.
and yeah, I mean,
Because
at
anybody with a great company culture is not going to
yeah,
just completely ghost you in that
yeah,
way, because they
yeah.
care about who you are as a
They
human
j
being. It's
they
just,
just do
yeah,
things right.
it's
Yeah,
rude.
no, no,
But
and
I will advise you, do not retaliate. Do as much as you may want to go on LinkedIn and blast them
right.
from here to, South America. Don't do it.
Yeah,
If you feel like you need to rant and get it out, call a colleague, write a letter,
exactly.
write an email, but don't put in
Don't send
anybody in the
it.
sender. I just don't put a name in the sender. I just type it all out because sometimes you can accidentally hit send. So don't do
Uh-huh.
that. But if there's no name there, it won't send, even if you screw up. Get it out however you need to get out that human emotion. And then again, remember, it's not you.
No,
And don't
keep
let
moving
them
forward.
make you buy into their version of you.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
don't.
exactly. Their dysfunction is not your problem.
It is not.
No, and really, at the end of it all, even though it might be a piece of work or somewhere you wanna be that you're like, "Oh, I really, really wanna be there." I am a firm believer, even sometimes when it's lean and you're like, that is what
Yeah.
is meant for you will not miss you."
Yeah. And
So,
I
hold
mean,
on to that.
if I've intentionally ghosted anybody, I'm going to apologize right now. Sometimes
Yeah.
I've gone back and I've realized that I missed an email or
Oh,
I looked
totally.
over something, and I go back and I go, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. And I've had to
Same.
apologize for not following up. So always be willing to exercise a little grace and a little forgiveness for people, because people are going through a lot.
Yeah,
But, again, I mean, if you don't hear back, you definitely can follow up,
right.
follow up and say, "Hey,
Yeah. It doesn't take long for someone to dash out 2 sentences. And, with AI and email
AI."
now to write it for you,
Yeah. It's
really no excuse. I remember I'm going way, way back in the Wayback Machine. When I was first hired at the ad agency that I worked at, my first job was to write the rejection send out the rejection letters to everybody. Didn't get it. I thought, "Ooh, this feels a little cold."
I not yeah. I've
I mean, it didn't come
worked in
from me, but
HR and I have, looked for applicants, and that whole process
yeah,
it's
it's
a
rough.
lot of work
Yeah,
internally too. But
yeah.
again, there are certain things that are not ghosting. So if, you get an
Right.
unsolicited email from somebody selling you something, you're not required to respond to that. Somebody took a
Exactly.
shot, you don't have to answer.
Right.
And I feel the same way about portals. If you're uploading something and there's no human
Yeah.
interaction,
Yeah.
don't set yourself up with this mindset that you're going to hear something, anything, because
Right.
chances are you won't.
Right.
Take the shot if
Right.
that's what you feel like you have to do, but it's one reason why I really just have never been a fan of RFPs, except when they're invited and they're very, very intentional.
Yeah.
One of our current favorite clients, current favorite, one of our favorite clients who's a current client.
No, no, that was right the first time.
We
You got
won
it.
the business through an RFP, but it was such a, you could tell that
Yeah.
they were super thoughtful throughout this whole entire process. It's so human and so
Yeah.
fun. And I have to tell you that this is a company whose company culture shines through at every touch point, and it has for several years of working with them. They truly are who they say they are, and it's lived in every part of the company. And so, and I feel like what a gift, because
Mm.
it's should be the norm.
Well, so here's the thing about that, right? Clearly, they're a successful company, which just goes to show we're all capable of doing the right thing and doing right by each other. And let's try and elevate our world by living by that a little more. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do it. So there you have it.
Here you have it.
Wow, thanks for spending this time with us today. We hope you got something out of this. If you did, please do share this around. Um, Go over and hit us up on soloprpro.com. We'd love to hear ideas for topics you want us to talk about. And please do review our podcast wherever you listen to it. We'd love for that as well, so that more people can hear the good news we have to share with you. And until next time, thanks for